After a short hiatus, welcome back to the Real Estate Sitdown presented by WB Homes. This is episode 21. I am Blair Berg, and this is Jaden Millette. How are you doing, Jaden?
Doing super well, Blair. How are you?
Doing well. So, just right off the top, going to reconfigure the show a little bit. We'll have some guests on every once in a while, but we're going to keep it shorter, more targeted towards buyers and sellers, less towards other agents. We'll still have tidbits here and there, but more segments, episodes will be shorter, more for the consumer. So first of all, we're going to talk about the state of the market. We haven't talked in a while, so right now we're still facing a seller's market. You're probably seeing a lot of things that, the slowed down, prices are coming down a little bit, but by definition, it's still a seller's market because I think we have a little bit over 2 months of inventory, which is not a whole lot. And really, it comes down to basic supply and demand. There's not a lot of supply out there, so demand is high. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that homeowners have either refinanced into a historically low interest rate. We're talking about 2.5%, 3%, or they've bought at that in the last year. So now that we have interest rates around, as of filming today, at 7.6% for a 30-year conventional, about 6.89 for a 15-year conventional, people just are not looking to give up their super good interest rates.
Right.
So to kind of dive into the market a little bit more, nationally, home sales were down by 18.7% in August of 2023 compared to August 22. And that's according to the National Association of Realtors, and that's nationwide. So yeah, pretty big dip. But
yeah, for sure.
To put that into perspective, the last few years have been unusual. Like I said, historically low interest rates, and with COVID and everything. So it's not that wild. I mean, if you can see here, the graphic here, pending home sales across the board in the month of August, you're usually in the mid-70s.
Right.
So, I mean, what are you seeing when you're going out and showing clients? Are you running into a lot of pendings? I know we work with Zillow leads, or a lot of Zillow leads coming in on pending properties. Or?
Yeah. Honestly, I've had probably 4 in the last week that'll come in from a Zillow lead, and it'll be something where I get the property, and then the second I go look on the MLS, it'll be either contingent on something or it'll be pending already. So
yeah, so I do think it's a little misleading, the numbers, just because when it comes down to pendings, I do think that if you're priced correctly, it'll still pend pretty quick. I think where you run into sellers and listing agents that are still thinking they should get over ask and they're charging over market value when they list, those are the ones that are sitting a little longer.
For sure.
So those are the ones that are slow to pend. But what I always tell my buyers is I think there's opportunity there. Because when you see one that's been sitting for a week, 2 weeks, and they don't have any offers, I think that's where you can come in and offer a little bit under list.
For sure.
And I run into a lot of buyers who say, well, I just want to wait for a price drop. Well, the issue with waiting for a price drop is everyone else is waiting for a price drop. Exactly. So once they drop that price, everyone who had the same mindset as you to wait, they're going to be jumping in. So you're going to be in multiple offers again, which normally if you're waiting for a price drop, you don't want to be in multiple offers. So I always say be the first one in. So they start the conversation. Then they're negotiating with you. Then it doesn't even open up the door to all the other people who are waiting for that price to come down. I mean, I know you've been putting some offers in. Are you offering, have a lot of these been at list or?
Honestly, a lot of them right now have been under list because, using the property that you just mentioned of being the first one with your foot in the door, I think it goes the same for talking about leads and talking about anything within the industry right now. If you're one of the first ones that somebody sees or you're one of the first ones in communication, I feel like you're going to be the one that's getting that showing, or you're going to be the one that's getting that property a little bit under list, or you're at least having them in negotiation with counters.
Yeah. And like I said, then it opens the door and you're actually doing some real negotiating, which the last couple of years you haven't been able to do it really.
Exactly.
You have to just sign your life away pretty much and pay $50,000 over ask. So I think that's where I know right now people are They're scared from high interest rates and stuff, but there is opportunity there.
For sure.
So yeah, to continue on that note, in Minnesota, comparatively, we were down 10.5% from August to August. Minnesota's been one of the less affected by the hard markets, just because, God, those big luxury markets, California, stuff on the West and East Coast, that's the big Airbnb markets are taking the biggest hits. Here in Minnesota, we're always pretty steady. And we've actually had a big influx of out-of-state buyers into Minnesota for that exact reason. It's a little bit cheaper to live here now than it is other places.
Right.
But for Minnesota, days on market was up 18.5% year over year, which is looking about the average is 32 days.
Yep.
Again, I think a lot of that comes down to that's taking account into the entire state. There's a lot of rural areas in Minnesota where that's kind of dragging that average up a little bit. Places in rural areas sit a little longer. And again, we're talking about agents who maybe aren't priced for this market.
Right.
And then again, year over year, Minnesota inventory is down 11.8%. Yeah. So that adds up to that. Like I said, if you're a buyer out there, focus on the opportunity here. If you're working with an agent, dig a little bit more on those that are sitting for a week or two.
For sure.
Don't wait for that price drop. Get in before they drop the price. Moving on to a little segment called I Saw It Online. I'm sure if you're a real estate professional out there, you see stuff online all the time where it's like, if you're clearly not in the industry because that's just wrong. So that was the inspiration for this segment because due to my algorithm being real estate stuff, it's all I see. So this one, I love this one because there's just no sample size to it at all. So saw this post on X. I'm used to calling them tweets.
Yeah,
but
me too.
I saw this post on X, and it says, newer U.S. homeowners are broke. Confirmed with an HOA manager at a new 150-home community in a pandemic hotspot. Literally half the homes are delinquent on HOA fees. Goes on to say 25 homes at 0 to 30 days, 20 at 30 days, 20 at 60-plus days, 80 at 90-plus days. Homes are 2 to 4 years old, on average about $400K. Yeah. So what I love about this one is she used the sample size of 150 homes in one HOA community.
Right.
Where they might just – HOAs are so hit or miss. I mean, I know – and this might be kind of a controversial topic. I don't know if I'll ever own an HOA because it's just people on an HOA board are just regular people who stepped up to the plate.
It's the same people that live there just like you.
So you never know like are they managing the money correctly, stuff like that. But I digress. I just think the sample size, if you're going to talk about new U.S. homeowners and then reduce it to 150 homes in one community, they might have an HOA collection issue.
Yeah.
I just feel like that
gets way too specific.
Yeah, I mean, do you have any take on that? I just feel like
wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, again, like you just said, the sample size of 150 in comparison, like that could be, like you just said, one collection issue or.
Well, and it might be different if it was 150 homes and each one was in a different HOA across the U.S. But if you're going to pick out one,
and it's all the same HOA.
Yeah. So. The reason I bring that up is when you're online, there are a lot of people that have a lot of followers and they might be verified now because all you have to do is pay for it. And they want to come off as an expert, but dig into their content a little bit and if you have questions or fears about the market, reach out to an actual professional that you know that can set you straight, because I just think the online gurus who I don't think are in the industry and they had a conversation with an HOA manager clearly don't understand what's going on in the market. So,
and then that's the same conversation that they had with the 150 person HOA.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and then they just sent out a tweet.
Exactly. Moving on, and this is kind of we'll plug the graphic into the video, but it's the mortgage debt versus homeowners equity. And while debt is going up, if you can see that the equity has skyrocketed. Right. So when you raise that up against the debt, you're still, as long as you can make your home payments and they're affordable for you, they fit into like your lifestyle,
Yep.
you're still building tons of equity.
For sure.
And and that's a conversation I have with buyers all the time. I know they're like, well, the interest rates are really high right now. And I'm not the agent who says, it's always the time to buy.
Right.
I'm realistic. It's not
Yep.
always the right time for everyone to buy. But I always say have a conversation with a lender that can tell you, can you afford it right now?
Right.
Because it's important to get in now, because while there are dips throughout history in the housing market, the housing market's a lot like the stock market, where it's never gone down and not come back stronger than it was.
It cannot die.
So while people get so hung up on, I'm going to lose money if the housing market crashes, if you don't have to sell, you're not losing money.
No.
Your house might go down in valuation, but as long as you're living there and you can live there for a little bit longer until it comes back,
Right.
you didn't lose anyway.
No.
If anything, maybe your taxes go down a little bit.
Yeah,
But
right.
so that's why I wanted to talk about this graphic, just because while the debt you can see is going up slightly, it's still your equity is. And the thing is, what is your alternative? You rent. Well, when you
Right.
rent, you're not building
I
equity
was
at
going to
all.
say, you're doing the same thing, paying the same amount. I had this conversation the other day, actually, with one of my clients. We were talking about, oh, gosh, yes, the interest rates are crazy high. They want to wait until 2024, but they're stuck in a renting situation where they also understand their motivation was to build equity and to make more money on top of what they're already spending, opposed to just throwing money at a renter.
Yeah, and when you're renting, you're paying off a landlord's mortgage, and which is great. And again, buying's not for everybody.
Right.
Renting might be the right situation for you, but what I'm saying is, if you're trying to escape a rental situation, talk to a lender. Look into it. Because, I mean, my girlfriend and I, we bought a duplex, and we live cheaper now we got our interest rate at 6.25%.
Right.
So it's not low by any means, but we live cheaper now than when we were renting. And when we were renting, our rent went up by 3% like clockwork every year.
Right.
So in another year, we would have been paying a lot more.
Yep.
So it just got to a point where our lease was up, and as much as I loved the flexibility of renting,
Right.
you can't avoid like that investment piece as well. So, I mean, the duplex, that's a long-term hold play, but we can talk about that at a different time. But
either way, like you said, just staying like on the topic, to create equity, you are still making money. You're not paying somebody's mortgage off. You're not getting interest rates hiked on you every year.
Yeah.
Like you're staying consistent and you're building equity no matter what.
Well, yeah, and that's, like I said, if you think you can't afford a single-family home,
talk to a lender,
and you're open to owning a duplex, start that conversation. When you buy a duplex, you can use 75% of that rental income towards your qualification.
Yep.
They're helping pay the mortgage too. And I know people look at landlords as like some sort of villain, but the two guys I have renting from me at my duplex, they couldn't afford a home yet, and it's more affordable than if they were to rent somewhere else. Yeah. And that's setting them up to be able to afford a home.
Yeah.
So
it's a stepping stone, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like they're at a time in their life where renting makes the most sense.
For sure.
And then by the time they're done renting, they'll be ready to move
and
buy a house.
Well, and I mean, we can both speak on that right away. I'm renting. I'm still young, right? Mm-hmm. But it's like a stepping stone, because by the time I'm 25, then it'll be something where I jump up into those shoes, and then I also can go back and do the same thing, be somebody else's stepping stone in a duplex situation, if that's the case, right?
Exactly. So kind of in that same vein, the next post on X I have here is: the biggest lie in the history of real estate is that a home is an investment property. Those that take the time to compare it to an actual investment property finally see the light. And while I kind of agree with the sentiment of the second sentence that obviously an investment property is more of an investment than a home, but if you're looking to stay where you're living for 2 to 5 years at least, your home is an investment property because of the equity you're building and the money you're not paying towards rent. Like you're going to get something for that, whether you rent it out at some point and move, or you sell it. You're building that equity. So while it isn't as much of an investment as a separate investment property, it's still an investment.
Well, and again, I mean, the curiosity that I would spike for people is, if you were to read this tweet I would also encourage somebody to go read what's the percentage of people that stay in their 30-year fixed mortgages the entire 30 years, right?
Yeah.
Because I'd argue that it's probably slim to none.
Yeah, and I would say, and I used to have that stat off the top of my head too, because that's what I always talk about. Again, this is one of those, I think this is like clickbait engagement tweet where it's like, come argue with me about this.
Yeah, right.
Because another one I see all the time is like, with an interest rate of this, a $500,000 home is actually like $800,000 over the life of the loan. But it's like, most people don't live in their house for 30 years.
No.
And still, even then, I think the mindset is all wrong too, because if you do keep it for that long and you turn it into investment property, like the duplex I have now, next year we'll buy a different place and move out and we'll rent out the whole thing.
Right.
We'll probably have that until it's paid off. But the thing is, we're looking at the debt leverage we have. We can take out a cash out refi if the rates get better, blah, blah, blah. But when we're making money on top of that, I guess in my mind, what we pay over the life of the loan is less of a concern of mine because the home is appreciating and I'm making cash flow every month.
Right.
So
it's a win-win realistically when you crunch the numbers, when you talk to a lender, when you know what you're doing. I mean, there's a positive to it either way.
Yeah, and I think it's really easy to get hung up on the negative. But if you bought correctly and within your budget, there's a win there.
100%.
Moving on to our last segment, FAQs. I think one of the biggest part about being an agent is like, I mean, around the office, we call it being the knowledge broker.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you're dealing with people who a lot of times haven't bought a home before. Right. So you're helping them understand the process and really being a teacher, a therapist, along with being their agent. So
that first question in the FAQs, what is earnest money? I mean, it's also known as a good faith deposit for the viewers.
So depending on what state you're in, they call it different things. Earnest money, good faith deposit. Usually you're putting 1 to 3% of the purchase price. And that's something you're submitting. It's going to go to title within 3 days of signing your purchase agreement, once both parties have decided on terms. And this is to protect the seller. Because if you think about it from their point of view, they're taking their home off the market. They're not marketing anymore. And if you decided to kill the deal at some point outside of any contingencies, they're out money. They've spent money. So this is to protect them that if you were to break that contract as a buyer, the seller now keeps that 1 to 3%. But that's also to say when you get to the closing table, that 1 to 3% is deducted from the cash to close when you buy the home. So I get that question. That's probably the question that I get most often is like, well, this isn't just like reserving the house, right? Like it goes towards your purchase price.
Yeah,
so
you get that money back if you're playing your cards right.
Exactly.
For the next question, what are closing costs?
So closing costs are fees paid at the closing table that cover appraisal fees, closing or return, and again, depending on what state you're in, closing or attorney fees, escrow funds, government fees, taxes. Those are typically 3 to 6% of your loan amount, and it depends on if you're financing or buying cash. If you're buying cash, your closing costs are a lot less. Because there's a lot less of the loan origination fees, stuff like that. But this is stuff that's on top of your purchase price and in your down payment. So make sure if you're a buyer, fully understand closing costs and talk to your lender about that, talk to your agent about it, and make sure you have the money because this is not your down payment.
No.
So this is on top of that.
Right. This is cash that needs to come out of your pocket.
Yes. All right. Do you got anything else?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, we're back. This has been episode 21 of the Real Estate Sitdown. If you have any questions or see anything questionable on social media, feel free to reach out. Give that to us. We'll break it down. If you haven't already, like and subscribe. And that's it for the Real Estate Sitdown.